Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Okay, so today is question and answer time. Been promising to do it, so had a few questions coming in through YouTube, through TikTok, Instagram. Even had questions from people I've just met, both ex-work colleagues, people who've just generally heard that I've been doing this restoration. So written them down, the questions. So we'll go through them and I'll do my best to answer what it is you want to know. So I was ex-London Fire Brigade, worked for London Fire Brigade for 30 years, joined in 1994. Primarily served in what was known as the Eastern Command. So that's Walthamstow, Ilford, Hainault, Hornchurch, and did some time as well nearer the centre at Shoreditch Fire Station. For the past 19 years, or the last 19 years of my career, I was in the hazardous materials team. So working with chemicals, radiation, basically trying to work out what the London Fire Brigade would do at a chemical incident. So that job was not only writing the policy for London Fire Brigade about how to deal with those incidents, but also to go out to incidents as a operational responder and an advisor for hazardous materials incidents. So I would go on and advise the incident commander, the person who was in charge, about what to do at chemical incidents. Also did obviously take charge of incidents as well, as to my rank. I was a group commander when I left. In short, yes. The plan is to fully kit out Dennis. The plan also is to make sure that when I do kit Dennis out, it will be kitted out sympathetic to its age. So this is a 1984 Dennis SS 135, but it's a 1984 appliance. So there is set equipment that is more expected on a vehicle of that age. That's the long-term goal, is to have everything on here that would be sympathetic to that age. In the initial stages, basically whatever I can get hold of will be going on the truck. Just because when it goes out to shows, etc., the worst thing ever will be to open up lockers and there to be nothing in there. So we want to be able to fill the lockers with equipment so that when the lockers are open, people can see the kind of stuff that the fire service uses, and it gives me something to actually talk about when people are wanting to talk to me about Dennis. So yes, short term, anything I can get. Long term, sympathetic to its age. I believe so. So when I went and first looked at Dennis, we did engage the pump. So to engage the pump, there's levers in the cab that you have to operate called the PTO, or the power takeoff. You operate those levers, and that puts a connection, in rudimentary terms, puts a connection through from the engine to the pump. Once that's through, you basically know the pump is running. You can hear it. You can hear the pump turning. But as a quick check, come around here to the pump, and we have a lever here on the pump, which is the engine speed. So by pulling down on this lever, I'm able to increase the revs of the engine, and therefore increasing the pumping capacity, or the power coming out of the pump. When we ran it, that all worked. Everything seemed to work. All the gauges seemed to operate as much as they could do, because it didn't have any water in, and it still hasn't had any water in. So I've not put any water through the pump. So does it work? Does it actually pump water? I don't know. I think it does, because as I say, it sounds like it's running properly, but whether or not it is or not, I don't know. In short, don't know. Not been able to find anything out yet about any specific significant incidents that Dennis went to. But that being said, Dennis is a film star. So there is a video. It is available on YouTube. I'll link that video in the history video that I do when I put it in. gives you an opportunity to go off and have a little search for yourself, see if you can find the video before I provide the link. But there is a video that Norfolk Fire and Rescue Service did all around on call, or at that time it was called retained firefighters. So it was an advert, shall we say, filmed by Gordon Honeycomb, who was a news reporter at the time. Also wrote a book called Red Watch, which was about an incident of fire that happened in London when a firefighter was killed. So he wrote that book, but he did this whole advert slash information film about retained or on-call firefighters and the benefits of having people with that qualification. And Dennis was the vehicle that they were using in that film. So go off and see if you can find it. If you can't find it, wait until the history video comes up and we'll put a link in there as well. Yes, you will. The plan, that's exactly what the plan is for Dennis. So the plan for Dennis is to restore Dennis, get him looking as good as we can do. We're not trying to make him look like he's just rolled off the production line, but get him looking as best as he can do, and get him out to some events, get him out to some shows, just to show him off. That being said, I'm not going to wait until he's in the tip-top condition. As soon as I can drive him, then as of when shows come up, we'll be taking him along so people can see the progress. But yeah, that's exactly what we're planning on doing. My hope is that the first one he'll probably go to will be the Bressingham Steam Fair event in Bressingham. They every year around about June, July time, they do a whole fire engine event where they get a number of appliances down there. My hope is to get Dennis along to that. I get this one quite often, so weddings or proms and things like that. The big problem with doing anything like that is that it costs. And when I say it costs the people to hire the truck. And you might think, well, what's the problem with that? You know, that's good, you're going to earn money. The problem with that actually is, in order to drive Dennis and earn money with that, I need an additional qualification. I need a thing called a CPC, a driver's certificate of professional competence, and that's an additional cost. And at this moment in time, my plan is not to use Dennis for anything where I'm going to be earning money, so I don't need to be doing it. My daughter, however, is doing it. She's doing the training at the same time as I'm doing it. And she is going to do the CPC because there's a possibility that she could go into this line of work, you know, driving HGVs as her career. So there's a possibility that she could drive it for me for that kind of things if we were to go down that line. But at the moment, that's not something I've been looking at. And I've got a sneaky feeling this question was asked by somebody who knows both myself and my wife. Those people who know my wife will know that my wife likes London buses, so I think it might be somebody who knows us both. But to my knowledge, no. Having a good search around, I've not been able to find a specific paint code as such for Dennis. Every reference to fire engines just talks about fire engine red. Even people in the trade who do painting of vehicles, including the person who hopefully will respray this vehicle, still talks about fire engine red. What we'll be doing with Dennis is, if when we come to paint him, whether or not we end up doing a complete respray or just spraying up the panels, etc., that need to be done, we'll have to restore the paint. So we'll have to polish him down, you know, get a good paint restorer, polish him down so we can actually match that colour properly. But it's a different colour than what was used on the buses. I need to have a look at my notes here. So the paint that was used typically on the Routemaster bus, which is the one that everyone seems to like, especially my wife, that was called Zero Paints, and it was ZP1216. Now I bow to your greater knowledge, old YouTube universe out there. If you know differently, please by all means let me know. But at the moment, that's all I know about the paint. Now, as previously mentioned, ex-Norfolk Fire Appliance. My hope is to contact Norfolk Fire and Rescue and see how much they will let me put on this vehicle to make it look like what it used to look like. I.e., can I put Norfolk Fire and Rescue name on it? Can I put their badge on it, etc.? I suspect possibly not, because they won't want it to be mistaken as a Norfolk Fire and Rescue appliance. But I'll be asking those questions. But ex-Knots, no. Norfolk Fire and Rescue. I think I walked into something quite hard and banged my head, to be fair. A moment of lunacy that made me decide to buy it. But there is a couple of reasons really that I went for it in the end. As I say, I retired last year, 2024. And I had previously, prior to retiring, I had previously thought about getting a fire engine when I retired as a little project, but pretty much dismissed it. But I retired, and we went to Bressingham, as previously mentioned. We mentioned about Bressingham. So we went to Bressingham just basically to have a look around, and the fire engine show was on, and that's where I met up with Laurie from Laurie's Mechanical Marvels, and Laurie has got a fire engine. Laurie's got a Dennis RS, so slightly older than this, a Dennis RS appliance. And I got chatting with him, and I said to him, look, one of the questions which he always gets asked is, do you regret buying it? And he said, absolutely not. He said it's been a pain. He said it's cost him a lot of money. It worries him when he goes out that it's going to break down, everything like that. He said, but does he regret it? Absolutely not. And he said, you know, if you get the opportunity, go for it. And it was Laurie who actually found Dennis, and actually found Dennis available, and for what I would consider a very reasonable price. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Finally, it's a fire engine. Who wouldn't want a fire engine? If you've got the opportunity to buy a fire engine, why wouldn't you want to buy one? You know, it's a big chunk of metal. It's a fun vehicle to have. If you're from the job, yes, there's a little bit of memory. You know, you think about riding on these things, because I used to serve on an appliance very similar to this. So there's that part to it as well. So why wouldn't you want one? And it might sound a bit corny, but you know, there are going to be people out there walking around who wouldn't be here if it wasn't for this vehicle. Okay, you know, this is a life-saving vehicle. It's done Trojan service, and as such, do you really think it's justifiable and right for it to end up on a scrapyard somewhere, rotting and falling into bits? No. These things, you know, they've given good service. It's about time somebody looked after them and kept them going, and that's what I'm trying to do. So I've already said Dennis is an SS. SS stood for standard specification, and the older ones, the RS, the rigid steel appliances, like what Laurie has got, they were the original. And it was actually London Fire Brigade, I believe, who went back to Dennis and went, no, we can't be doing with the RS. The big problem with the RS was the cab didn't tilt. So to do any kind of work on the engine, you either had to work through a small inspection hatch in between the officer in charge's seat and the driver's seat. You either had to work through that hatch there, or take the whole cab off in order to get to the engine, which would be an absolute nightmare, and would take a long time then to do any kind of servicing on your vehicle. So London Fire Brigade went, can't be doing with that. We need to have a a cab that tilts, so we can lift the cab off and actually work on the engine. And that's what the SS became. The SS has the tilting cab. Did it influence my decision to buy it? Sort of. And the reason I say sort of is because when I bought it, I didn't really know the difference between an RS and an SS. That's something that came along speaking with Laurie. Laurie, however, yes, I would say it did influence him. It certainly influenced him on the decision on what to recommend me and what to tell me to go and have a look for. And he specifically said a couple of things. First of all, he said, get something old. Don't go getting anything new, because everything new is all electronic. There's computers, etc., running the engines. And the problem with an old, inverted commas, old new truck, or an old truck that's got computers, etc., on them, is once they stop being supported by the manufacturers, etc., it's quite difficult to then work on the computer side of things. These are just purely mechanical. All right, there's no computers on this at all, so it's purely mechanical. So as long as you've got a half an ounce of mechanical knowledge around you, or can access people with that kind of knowledge, you can pretty much keep this thing going. So that was one of the first bits of advice. The second bit of advice was from Laurie was, don't get an RS, because the amount of work he's had to do on it, he's realised the benefit of having a cab tilt. He said, so absolutely get the SS because of the cab tilt. So it did influence the decision, because obviously had an RS come along and I'd looked at it, then I probably wouldn't have gone for an RS because of what Laurie had already said to me. The garden type hose, it's not called a garden hose, obviously. It's called the hose reel. The hose reel was really sort of viewed as like the quick attack hose. It's, you can just pull off the reel however much you want, and make a quick attack on a fire. Realistically, only really for small fires, bins, skips, cars, that kind of thing. Not really designed for structure fires, so not like going into a house. Some fire services do and did use the hose reel for maybe just a single room fire, like a fire in a kitchen or something. They'd use the hose reel, but it's been found and proven over time that we talk about a thing called weight of attack, and weight of attack means how much water you're actually using to put your fire out. And it was agreed and decided really that the hose reel did not give sufficient weight of attack to put your fires out. So your hose reel. So that's what your hose reel is, your quick attack thing. So, if you've got a house on fire or something, you've got a single room on house on fire, then yes, absolutely, somebody might pull that off and start squirting it through the window whilst the breathing apparatus team are getting set up ready to go in. But they're going to be going in with the bigger hose. So we talk about size of hose. Hose reels, when they, on this appliance, it was a 15mm diameter hose. Nowadays, the hose reel is bigger. It's 22mm. You get a bit more water with that, and there is question now around whether or not that could now be used for structures. But realistically, we talk about the bigger stuff. It's high pressure. The hose reel is a high pressure system. So therefore, the water going through to those is taken up to 30 bar. So very good for, penetrating into, if you've got like a grass fire or something and you need to get it deep into the soil, really good for doing that kind of thing, because it's really high pressure water at 30 bar. The big stuff, the big hose, the stuff that connects into the pump here, connects into these outlets here, well, that's low pressure hose. Tested to 10 bar, so you don't take it, it would never go to anything bigger than 10 bar, and it only goes to 10 bar when it's being tested. When it's being used, 7 bar. But it's big hose, it carries a lot of water with it. And there was two sizes of hose that the truck would use. 45mm hose and 70mm hose, and that's taken off the pump here. You'd also use the 70mm hose for connecting into a fire hydrant, which would then go into the bottom bit here. So it either go into this bit here, which is called the collecting head. So it would either go into that, or it would go to this one here, which is the inlet straight into the tank. So you would use that hose for that. The fire service did also have access to even bigger hose, 90mm hose, and that was carried on a hose laying truck. So something different to this, it would come along and it would lay that hose out, and that was if you'd need to transport water over long distances. So say you're out in a rural area where you're quite a distance away from a fire hydrant, you'd lay the hose out from that, and that would get the water to your fire ground, and then into your pumps. How long does it last? Difficult question to answer, really, because that depends on which hose you're using, how many you're using, what pressure you're using it out at, etc. So generally, if you're using one hose reel, then your tank's going to give you about 15 minutes worth of water. If you're using two hose reels, 7 minutes. So you can see how it equates. If you go to the big hose coming off the back, less time and less time. So generally, when you get to a fire, the first thing the driver does is not rely on the water that they're carrying from the truck. Or if they are using that, then it's only if they're going to look at trying to put a car out or a bin or something. If they're looking at any kind of a house fire, then they're going to need other water, because answering the next question, what happens when the tank runs out? Well, it shouldn't. Because what should happen is the driver should be running off a couple of lengths of hose from the collecting head to a fire hydrant and connecting that up. Obviously, in London, really lucky, because in London, pretty much every road had a fire hydrant on every corner, and if the road was of any kind of length, there'd be hydrants all the way along the road as well. So you didn't have to go very far to get access to water. If you're out in rural areas, then you might have significant problems. So then you'd have things like a second fire engine would come along, and you'd connect that one to this one, and you'd put the water from that tank into this tank, and then that one would go off and get some more water from somewhere else and keep bringing it back, and that would be called a shuttle. So they would shuttle the water in. Or you could relay, you could have a number of fire engines connected together, going off to a water source somewhere and bringing that in. And when we talk about a water course or a water source there, that could be anything. That could be a river, a pond, even a private swimming pool. You can pump out of that. At the moment, actually, it's not been too bad. Dennis himself cost me £3,000, which, if you think about buying a 1984 vehicle, a vintage vehicle, £3,000 is not a lot of money. Certainly when it's as good condition as Dennis is. So yeah, it cost me £3,000 to buy Dennis. Since then, I've only spent about £850 on ancillary equipment. That's paint, light bulbs, wood for the floor, things like that. About £850. So as I say, it's not cost me a lot of money at the moment. That being said, there are some expensive jobs coming up. The paint. If I end up having to get the whole of Dennis resprayed, that whole front cab resprayed, that's going to potentially cost me in the region of about £2,000 to get that resprayed. Likewise, the tyres. Even though the vehicle is exempt from the regulations around tyres to say that you have to be replaced, they can't be older than 10 years old, Dennis is exempt from that. I don't want to be driving around on a set of tyres that are going to explode on me. So I may well have to get the tyres replaced. I certainly want to get the front ones done at least. The tyres for Dennis, between £300 and £400 each. So if I end up having to get all the tyres done, don't forget we've got double wheels on the back, so that's 6 tyres in total. That's going to cost me about £2,500 in tyres. So as I say, there's some expensive stuff coming along, but it's all stuff that I knew was going to happen. I don't know. I've already mentioned it, I'm not actually legally allowed to drive Dennis yet. I don't have the license for him. That being said, I have driven Dennis around on a little bit of private area, private ground, so I have driven him a little bit, and he drives great. talking with Tom from Laurie's YouTube channel. Tom drove Dennis back from where we got him to my home, and probably was driving him for about an hour and a half. Tom is a truck driver. He drives articulated lorries, and I kind of trust what he says about trucks. And driving it, he said it's lovely. He said it was perfectly good. It has got plenty of power in him. He was able to accelerate uphill, which is something which Laurie's appliance struggles a little bit with. So Jupiter is a little bit sluggish going up the hills. Dennis doesn't seem to have any problem with that. Was accelerating up hills, and also Dennis, nice steady 60 mile an hour down the dual carriageways and the motorways. Didn't really struggle with that whatsoever. Drove really nice. Also, Dennis is a automatic, so he's a very easy truck to drive. It is literally a case of just stick him in drive, press the pedal, and away you go. So not really feeling any kind of trepidation around driving Dennis when I finally do my test. I've already done the theory test for it and the hazard perception test, and I've passed that bit, so that's all hunky-dory. Sometime in November, beginning to middle of December, I'll be doing my practical side of it, and then after that, hopefully, I'll be able to take Dennis out on the roads, and we'll see what he's like. I'll personally be able to see what he's like, but according to Tom, Dennis is a good one. If this has inspired you to want to ask other questions, please don't hesitate, send them through. Do I do another question answer session? That's really going to depend on you. If I get questions off you and I get enough questions off you, then I'll look at doing it. If after a while I think I've only got a couple of questions, I'll probably just answer them in the comments, etc. But if you like hearing about it, if you like just seeing this stupid old bloke sitting here on the back of a truck chatting to you about the fire engine, then send your questions through and I'll answer them for you. Thanks everyone for your support. It's been amazing so far, and I'm sure it will continue to be amazing. So please, thank you so much for your support. If you haven't already liked and subscribed, please do so. It does apparently help the channel. I don't know how it helps the channel. I don't know that much about YouTube. I don't know how YouTube works. I don't know. Really, I'm using YouTube because I want a video record of doing this work, and if you like watching it and sort of like watching my journey going through doing this, then that's great. Please like and subscribe. It'll just give me the support to know people are out there are watching it. So thanks everyone. The next video, I don't know what the next video is going to be, but the next video will be back to doing something on the truck. So thank you very much. Bye for now.